All right, folks, prediction time. I just want to stress these are my predictions. These are not the predictions of NowThis as a whole. I'm not an expert or a scientist. I'm just a sicko who's obsessed with elections and polls and everything else. So let's just get right down to it. Here's the map as it stands with the swing states grayed out. Now, if you'll notice, there's one state that was previously red that I now have as a swing state, and that's Iowa, thanks to Ann Seltzer, her incredible poll that had Kamala Harris up 3. This is pretty shocking. Ann Seltzer is notable for going against the grain and sort of revealing things that we don't know yet, right? She knew that Hillary Clinton's lead was not what we thought in 2016. She knew that Joe Biden didn't have such a comfortable lead in 2020. And now she says Kamala Harris is actually ahead of Trump in a state that, even if her poll showed him up by 4, would still have been very, very bad news for him. That being said, outliers still exist, so I'm still going to go ahead and put this one in the red column. And I'm also going to do that for Arizona. I just think the polls there, more than any other state, have shown a significant lean towards the Republicans. That could be border issues. It could be racial depolarization among Latinos. But I really think Arizona is going to go to Trump this year. Now, Nevada, speaking of prolific, well-respected pollsters, John Ralston of Nevada has just posted his prediction that Kamala Harris is going to win it in a slight edge. And he did that by looking at the early votes. Now, usually with early votes, they're not too predictive, right? You can't really tell too much. You don't know if your electorate in 2024 is going to have the same habits they did in 2020 when there was a pandemic and everyone was voting by mail, right? And especially in Nevada, which just instituted automatic voter registration. That means every time you go to the DMV, you get signed up to vote, and they make you pick a party. And a lot of people are not picking parties. So there's this huge influx of non-party affiliated voters, and independents and non-party affiliates tend to break towards Kamala Harris, right? So when you look at where that all lays up, it is pointing to a narrow win for Kamala in Nevada. Then we're going to the Rust Belt, or the the blue wall states, right? Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Michigan has been the bluest polling state for Kamala the entire campaign, really. I think it's pretty safely in her pocket. Wisconsin is is a little trickier, though, right? Wisconsin doesn't have many people of color as Michigan. It was one of the real shockers for Trump in 2016, and even Biden barely won it in 2020. It was really close, but we're seeing big turnout in school areas, and we're seeing it in Madison, and there's proximity to Minnesota, where Tim Walz is obviously the governor. So my gut thinks that Wisconsin's gonna be blue. And now we get to Pennsylvania. This is my home state. I am from Northeast Pennsylvania, NEPA, the bellwether of bellwethers, right? There have been books written about how my home county switched from Obama to Trump in 2016. That being said, in the years since, the state's gotten a lot more blue. It has a Democratic governor. It has a Democratic state house. I used to work in the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives. I would have never in a million years thought the Democrats would ever take control. There's a lot more college educated voters now, and the cities are growing, especially in southwestern PA, around Pittsburgh and Allegheny. I just really think that Pennsylvania, given its sort of Democratic movement over the last few years, and I think this is a state where the ground game is really going to make a difference, where, you have Elon Musk outsourcing it and just throwing people in the back of a van and hoping they'll knock on doors, versus the hundreds of thousand volunteers that Kamala has knocking on people's doors in Pennsylvania. And I really think Pennsylvania is going to go blue. And I don't even think it's going to be that close, to be honest with you. Again, I'm an optimist. I've been very bullish on Kamala for a while now, but this is just where I see things. And then we get to these two, North Carolina and Georgia. And these are big because these are ones we're going to find out relatively early on Tuesday, right? This is how we'll know, whether she's running away with it, or, the polls were wrong and they're underestimating Trump support again, or, holy moly, Kamala might just take this whole thing. And North Carolina, this one, Biden lost North Carolina by so little. It was so close in North Carolina. There was a last minute sex scandal with the Senate candidate, Cal Cunningham, that might have just put Biden, just a little bit under what he needed to win North Carolina. But again, I think this is a state with a lot of college educated people moving to it. I think the demographics of North Carolina are trending in a way that is favorable to Biden. Plus, they have a historically bad candidate in Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson running for governor. This is the man who posted on Nude Africa about various cuckolding fetishes with his wife, and claimed proudly that he was allegedly claimed proudly that he was a black Nazi, end quote. And, you know, people say the reverse coattails effect isn't real. That is like a bad underballot candidate affecting the top of the ticket. But I think in this case, Mark Robinson is so historically bad, and it was so close last time, that I really, truly think that North Carolina could go to Kamala Harris. And that leaves us Georgia. I mean, if you'll notice on the map, she's already won, right? But what I'm really hoping for, just for my own sanity, is that one of North Carolina or Georgia gets called earlier. And again, we got to go back to Georgia. The polls in Georgia have not been great for Kamala Harris this year. This one seems to have shifted more red since 2020. But again, at the end of the day, Joe Biden won the election in Georgia. Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff both won their elections in Georgia. This is another state that's seeing a lot of college-educated people move to. And, you know, I feel like it might go to Kamala. I don't know. That's my gut. You know, the counter theory is that racial depolarization is real, right? Black and Latino voters are starting to vote more for Republicans. They're not as historically reliable for Democrats as they have been. That's a theory. You know, that hasn't really been proven. That could also just be the pollsters having a hard time reaching Black and Latino voters. I think there's more of an argument to be had that racial depolarization is more real among Latino voters than it is Black voters. And again, in a state like Georgia, I honestly think that Georgia is going to show out to elect Kamala Harris president. And that's my gut. That's my vibe. 308 to 230. I hope. I could be very wrong. I'm not saying she can't lose, and I'm not saying he can't win. But my gut feeling throughout this whole election is that the polls missed in 2016. So I thought, okay, sure, they'd fix it for 2020. Then they missed in 2020. And I thought, surely by now they must be trying to fix things. And I think they are. And I think there's evidence, at least I'm persuaded by, that a lot of the pollsters are putting their thumbs on the scale to sort of give Trump more of an advantage, because they're not seeing it in their polls and they're scared of missing it again. That's why you have these polls from Pennsylvania, from reputable places, that are saying they're turning a Kamala Harris +4 among registered voters and applying a very strict and weird likely voter screen and turning that into a Trump +1. There are people who are hurting their polls, which is they're scared to actually come out and say something for fear of being wrong. So they're all just giving ties, even though it's statistically improbable, if not impossible, for a tie to exist in this many cases. And again, it's the vibes as well, man. I just look at her campaign where she's done almost nothing wrong. And I look at Trump's campaign where they're flailing and desperate and sweaty and talking about squirrels and garbage and not exactly finishing strong. In 2016, there was a last-minute shift of momentum towards Hillary Clinton, right? 2020, I don't know. I don't know what happened at the end of 2020. Ann Seltzer said that Trump was stronger than the polls believed. So that was an indicator. And both of those indicators here, the last-minute shift of momentum seems to be against Trump. Ann Seltzer released a shocking poll that is against Trump. And, you know, it really seems like everything is falling into place, except for these polls, which we have good reason to doubt that Kamala Harris is going to win pretty handily. I really hope I'm not wrong, but I'm putting it all out there on the line in advance. These are my predictions, and we'll see what happens soon.